Hey, this is Dimitri with Canucks and welcome to another video review. There are certain trends within the case industry that we're noticing, and that is things are getting smaller and more space efficient, but also we're seeing increasing demand for silent designs as our priorities shift. And it's awesome to see NZXT right on point when it comes to filling that limited market void. So this is the H440, an extremely simple and elegant mid-tower designed for absolute silence, and it is released at $120. It is also quite compact, much smaller than the previous H630, and one thing you notice right away is this entirely closed off design. There are no optical slots, and the front panel is completely bare with just a simple logo at the bottom. The side window is not tinted, but I really love their approach with the H series. No random angular designs as we've come to expect from NZXT, and the window is very large to show off the beautiful internals, and it also reveals the bottom power supply chamber with the illuminated NZXT logo that can also be switched off. The entire outer shell is covered with steel, so build quality is totally outstanding, plus the reflective paint job adds to this modern design. Now the case also will be available in black and red combinations, which I think would look stunning. Now given this is a silent enclosure, ventilation strips are limited to one side on the front panel, so your front intake fans will have to work extra hard for adequate airflow. And taking off the front panel, we find a magnetic dust filter and three 120mm included fans with dual 140mm mounts available. So right out of the box, the cooling potential is mostly utilized, and that's awesome to see. Now the panel itself has a slight opening in the bottom as well to help with intake, and a very thick layer of noise dampening foam, plus about 2 centimeters of clearance between the panel and the fans, so they're not completely choked, but there will be some resistance. It is a similar scene up top with ventilation at the rear and on the left side, plus the same layer of noise dampening foam. All the connections are located at the top with 4 USB ports, audio jacks and PR buttons, all of which are attached to the frame, so taking off the top panel is hassle-free. And what we have here in terms of cooling options is another array of triple 120mm or dual 140mm mounts with mounting strips for a little bit extra flexibility for maneuver. And what makes the H440 special is the ability to house dual 360 radiators, thanks to the absence of the optical drive cage. Coming around to the back, we've got standard exhaust with the same slider mount for the fan, I/O LED button for some illumination, 7 PCI slots, and a bottom mounted power supply. The case stands quite high off the ground with rubberized feet, plus there's the removable power supply dust filter and some mounting holes on the floor for some extra drives. Now let's take off the panels and explore the internals. But first, each panel is covered in noise dampening foam as well, and because it is quite thick, you can see the cable marks, and once fully assembled, it was actually quite difficult closing the panel because it does limit the clearance. The thumb screws also stay with the side panel that I would love to see become sort of the standard. And with the unique design of the H440, they've moved things around, and first thing you notice is the complete separation between the 3 chambers. All of the drive storage goes behind this panel. It could have been a little more clean, but since we never really see it, it doesn't really matter. The power supply is completely enclosed within its own chamber, on top of which we get 2 SSD brackets with appropriate cable cutouts for routing. There's also a 140mm exhaust fan included at the rear, so pretty impressive out of the box cooling. And moving on to the drive cage, there are 5 caddies that are well spaced out to allow optimal front airflow penetration. I'm really happy to see they've moved away from their flimsy plastic drive caddies to fully metal ones with rubber grommets for mechanical drives and SSD support. And regardless of the drive you're using, all SATA ports are lined up without an issue, and also notice the thumb screws stay with the bracket, which is awesome. Now the whole idea of this large space between the caddies is for less resistant airflow from the front, and what I would have loved to see is an integration of SSD mounts at the bottom of the caddies, so you can basically utilize dual drives on each drive caddy and perhaps remove the ones that you're not using for a more efficient airflow. I'm not surprised to see a 10-fan hub at the rear, plus a lot of cable tie mounts to secure all your wiring and rubber grommets for routing. The power supply chamber is closed off from the front, but we do get all this space at the rear, so assembling a clean system is even possible with your eyes closed. And there are some cable tie mounts to get you started and additional drive mounts as well. Now the compromise here is that the clearance between the side panel is limited, especially because of the thick foam, so really making sure everything is tucked away and cabling as flat as possible is recommended. Now coming into water cooling options, removing all the drive caddies, there is clearance to mount a 360 rad in either direction, although I noticed there wouldn't be enough clearance to mount a 3.5-inch drive at the bottom with these 45-degree fittings, and given how much room there is at the bottom, it would have been nice for NZXT to take this into account. Installing a 240 rad at the front still allows 2 out of the 5 drive caddies to be in place, and check out how much room there is for push and pull scenarios and much thicker radiators. Now depending on the orientation of your top radiator, the top drive caddy might have to come out to make clearance for those fittings, but it is still very impressive how this thing can handle water cooling. Closing the top panel, you see there's very little room for exhaust, less than a centimeter to be exact, and that's why I think ventilation cutouts would have been more ideal around the entire panel and not just on those two sides. And finally, starting with the assembly, removing the power supply bracket and getting all those cables in order, you can see how carefree you can be, as none of that actually affects the system on the other side. There's close to 3 inches between the top panel and our memory modules, and close to 11.5 inches of GPU clearance on tilt drive caddies. Of course, that can be removed for additional clearance. I also love those few extra cutouts underneath the motherboard and the extra routing for your GPU power cable. They really made sure to make cable work in this case extremely simple, and it looks great. And turning the case around, making sure no cables are loose, and it does a fine job at being one of the easiest cases to work in. And in conclusion, the H440 brings a lot to the market with its outstanding build quality and elegance, and with the absent optical drive cage, very impressive array of water cooling and out-of-the-box cooling potential with 4 fans included. The 3-chamber design, while not entirely new, has been refined to almost perfection with excellent cable management. New metal drive caddies along with sound isolation and price are all positives that makes this a highly competitive silent enclosure. Now there's always seems to be a compromise when it comes to silent designs, and I wish there would be more ventilation on both the top and front panels, and I would have loved to see dual drive support on a single caddy at the same time, just to free up some front intake. But aside from these minor complaints, NZXT has managed yet again to deliver an excellent all-around chassis that deserves the damn good and damn good value award, as regardless of what you're planning to do with the H440, it will handle it all, and it will do it silently. So this concludes our review of the H440. Now of course, we can't leave it off without mentioning the extremely popular Define R4, and would like to hear your opinion, which one you'd prefer and why. As always, thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe for more similar content, and we'll see you in the next one.